Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC 263. In this one, we have our co-main event as Waldo Cortes-Acosta takes on Ante Delija. Waldo is 14-2 as a professional, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Meanwhile, Delija is 26-6 as a professional, and he as well is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. For Waldo, was on a pretty good win streak in the heavyweight division. 5 fights, KO'd Lucas Bresky, decisioned Andre Arlovsky, decisioned Robelis de Spain, knocked out Ryan Spann. And in his most recent win, which was at UFC 316 this June, he defeated Sergey Spivak, which is easily Waldo's best win to date. Now, his last fight was this August when he took on Sergey Pavlovich and lost via decision. Meanwhile, for Delija, this is going to be his second UFC fight. He actually made his debut not that long ago, about a month and 3 weeks, when he ran right over Marcin Tybura in roughly over a minute. But that being said, Delija is a MMA veteran, a former runner-up in the 2021 heavyweight Grand Prix at the PFL, and the 2022 heavyweight champion of the PFL, beating names like Renan Ferreira, to properly say it. I gotta say, I'm actually intrigued by this co-main event, as similar to Aspinall versus Gane, but I guess you could call it the dollar store version of that. These two heavyweights are actually quite skilled. They have intriguing, how do I want to say this? Actually really good techniques. And Waldo and Delija actually have some nuances to their game and some things to break down in this fight that makes this a lot trickier than the classic, heavyweight A versus heavyweight B. Who's going to land the big overhand right first? So in a way, like I said, it's Aspinall versus Gane, sort of. Again, just a dollar store version of that. But it's still two heavyweights with clear skills and clearly different paths of victory that they can take, instead of this the normal, I take you down and we're going to stay on the ground because, heavyweights don't have the ability to get up, or I land that one shot that they need. Now, this one is actually kind of skillful, and it's a really tough fight to call, in all honesty. For Cortes-Acosta, his best abilities is his boxing. He used to have an amateur boxing career, also had a career in baseball. All that didn't last too long, but you can clearly see it in Cortes-Acosta's fights. Specifically, when Cortes-Acosta, I'm going to say Waldo. I'm going to keep saying Waldo throughout the video. When Waldo fires his cross, you can kind of see it's kind of like he's pitching a fastball. It kind of has this arc to it and then swings, but there's such speed and accuracy to the right hand that Waldo's able to fire it with pretty good precision. Another good thing about Waldo's game is his jab. He's got probably one of the best jabs in heavyweight, besides, like, say, Cyril Gane's, as Waldo is very persistent, very good at just sticking it at his opponent's face, and kind of like Sean Strickland in a way, can just stifle an opponent and kind of get them off their game by just keeping a jab in their face and throwing it with consistent volume. And also, in order to keep that persistence, Waldo has also added pretty good calf kicks as well. And honestly, what seems to be a 15 minutes of cardio for sure, as Waldo has gone the distance more times than not in his career and is shown to be a relatively fresh at the end of it, and seems he could probably go another round. Another thing about Waldo is his steadily increased takedown defense. And now I know he got out-wrestled and lost to Marcos Rogerio de Lima. But since that fight, Waldo has defended a lot more takedowns. It's recently proven when Waldo fought Sergey Spivak, who is a very tricky wrestler with really good trips and throws in the clinch. And Cortes-Acosta was able to stay on his feet for roughly 90% of that fight. If there is one knack about Cortes-Acosta, I would probably say it's his power. You look at the record, Cortes-Acosta doesn't have that many knockouts in UFC. His only 2 knockout wins are Lucas Bresky and Ryan Spann. And note, those 2 were former light heavyweights that moved up. But other than that, when Cortes-Acosta has fought a true heavyweight, he's not been able to finish them. Not even a washed Andre Arlovsky who was like past 40. So it's clear Cortes-Acosta doesn't have much power, but he makes up for it with a high work rate, good volume boxing game, and overall just being able to stay on the outside and just pick apart his opponents from range. Also, I will say Waldo has a really good chin. He took some big shots from Sergey Pavlovich, one of the hardest hitters in the division, and he seemed relatively fine by the end of the fight. So Waldo has a pretty good chin on him. I guess the only other knack I would have really is I'm not a big fan of when Waldo consistently kind of showboats. Like, I get it. Sometimes fighters do it, and sometimes it works to a varying degree. But if you're losing the fight and then you're showboating at like the third round, that stuff just kind of annoys me to no end. Just because if you're losing the fight, then don't showboat. Try and win. Now, if you're winning and you're showboating, that's a bit different. You know, it's the high of victory. It's like you're clearly in control. Granted, it can't get you caught. So, you know, there's a right and a wrong way to do it, I see. For Ante Delija, his striking game is a bit more simpler than Waldo. Now, Delija has a pretty good jab, really strong overhand right, and and I would say better overall with his clinch striking, specifically his short range uppercuts and pretty good like hooks when he gets the collar tie. And while granted, how do I want to say this? But while Delija has been trained by Crow Cop, there's not really much comparison to their striking. Even they're both from Croatia, and as I said, Delija is more or less a Crow Cop prodigy. Like I said, his striking game's a bit more simple, very well rounded striking game. He's got good kicks and good close range weapons, but clearly Delia's best striking skill set would be his close range strikes, as that's how he was able to destroy Tybor. Once he hurt Tybor with overhand cross, then he just unloaded with like short range uppercuts and then eventually finished it with ground and pound. That being said, I do believe Delija is the better wrestler of the two and has very good takedowns in the clinch, similar to Spivak, but I think with a bit more strength to them. And then once there, Delija has some submission games. Now, he hasn't had a submission, or sorry, one via submission in quite a while now. But you watch some of the tape on you watch some of the tape on Delija and you see a submission game. He clearly has it. And as well as just mean, and I mean mean ground and pounds. How he was able to defeat Renan Vieira. How he was able to defeat most of his opponents like Tybora. Is Delija's just ground and pound is ferocious. He got good leverage on it. He switches between hammer fist and elbows pretty effectively and never kind of lets off the gas once he has his opponent hurt. I'd also say Delija has good cardio as well, as he's fought in title fights before and he's gone 5 rounds in those as well. So these two honestly have pretty good cardio, like to go the full 15 minutes. Now, looking at the physical specs, there's not too much of a difference. Now, Waldo will be slightly bigger at 6'4" compared to Delija, who is 6'3", but they both have the same reach at 78 inches. I think the biggest factor in this fight is the power. I do think Delija is the harder hitter, like shot for shot of the two. And while Waldo, I do believe, is the better overall technical boxer and definitely has the higher work rate when it comes to volume striking, Delija has the power to kind of offset that. And while maybe Delija can't knock out Waldo, he can certainly hurt Waldo and possibly have the bigger moments of the round. Honestly, what's so tricky about this fight is just some of the very minute details on who's going to have the slight edge in this. You can look at the odds, right? Minus 105 for Waldo, minus 115 for Delija. It's essentially a pick'em, and that makes complete sense. I've been going back and forth on this fight quite a bit, as I've doubted Waldo before against like Spivak, and he proved me wrong. But at the same time, when he's lost to a fighter of a clear championship caliber like Pavlovich just kind of stifled Waldo and has had clearly better striking moments, and his power was clearly kind of clearly the biggest X factor in that fight. I feel like that's kind of going to happen again in this fight. Granted, Pavlovich hits harder than both of these two, but for sure, Delija is going to hit harder than Waldo. I think it really comes down to who can set their tempo up first. For Delija, if he can keep the pressure on and win a lot of the close range exchanges, I believe he's going to win the fight. Simply having the bigger moments on the feet and possibly even getting Waldo down. Now, that being said, if Waldo is able to stay on the outside for 15 minutes and just pick apart Delija with his persistent jab and leg kicks, then he's going to win the decision. And his takedown defense has proven to be really good. And I don't know how, and I do think Delija will struggle to take down Cortes-Acosta. So, really, it's like their striking games are slightly different. One is more technical, but one clearly has more power. Then their wrestling games, one is better offensively, while the other has proven to have good defensive, or sorry, steadily improved defensive wrestling. See what I mean? These two clearly are very skilled heavyweights, and it really just comes down to, the nooks and crannies is of in like, okay, maybe the slight edge. But for my official prediction, I'm going to pick Ante Delija. Again, it's the X factor for me is simply the power. And while, like I said, if Delija cannot knock out Cortes-Acosta, then I believe he's going to have the bigger moments, simply hurting Cortes-Acosta. And overall, just having the bigger moments. If you have two fighters who are roughly of the same skill set, the one with more power often wins, because even if, let's say, they can't get the finish, then at the very least they're going to have the bigger moments to the judges, hurting their opponent and more. It's going to be like, I think for every, I don't know, 5 to 10 punches Costa throws, it's going to be the equivalent of like 1 or 2 of Delia's punches, if you see what I mean. And those 1 or 2 punches, the guy who's throwing like 5 to 10 strikes might be more busy, but the guy throwing 1 or 2 strikes has clearly the more impact and clearly the more impactful moments of the fight. That's where I think it comes down to. Plus, Delia's championship experience is clearly a big factor in this fight, as it's going to help him prepare, as he has gone, 5 rounds before and should have the cardio to go 15 minutes and keep pace with Cortes-Acosta. So my official prediction, I'm going to go with Ante Delija, and I'm going to pick him via unanimous decision. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you liked the video, comment and subscribe, leave a comment specifically how you think this fight will go. What do you think of the skill sets for these two? And truly, who do you think is going to win in this matchup? Next up, we'll have our main event, Steve Garcia versus David Onama. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care.